Indeed. Indeed. So a miracle means circumstances or events that surpass all conventional or natural expectation. Now that's the definition that Mitch Horowitz gives us in his book, The Miracle Club, which has been our book of the month this month that we've been studying. And I don't know about you, but I see manifestations of miracles around me all the time. Have you ever looked at a skeleton and wondered how we can walk? I have. I mean, they won't stand up by themselves, right? But you put a little bit of skin and muscle and this kind of stuff around it, and suddenly it can walk and dance and do all sorts of things. It's a miracle to me. Our bodies are miracles to me, the way that they work. So we're wrapping up our Miracle Club today and going to finish that exploration with my talk, Treat and Move Your Feet. Now, you may have heard that before around here and wondered, what are they talking about? Treat and move your feet. What is that? Basically, treat and move your feet is where we do our prayer work. We do our affirmative prayer treatments. And then we listen for the divine guidance and take inspired action on that guidance. So it's the being and the doing part of the teaching. It's the being and the doing part of it. And I think that our book this month does a really good job of diving into methods of mind power. That's what Mitch calls it, methods of mind power. We call it spiritual technology around here because that's what we believe it to be. And he doesn't use the same old jargon. Anybody get tired of the jargon? You know, it doesn't mean anything after a while, does it? And I'm guilty. I know I'm guilty. I'm trying to clean that up. I know we all are, but he's doing a good job of not doing that. And he's teaching more about the metaphysics and spirituality. Now, I appreciate that in the book, and particularly in this last section, he looks frankly at problems and possibilities of new thought. Problems and possibilities, as well as the positive thinking philosophy in general. And he raises some really good questions about it. He also poked us a little bit about what he thinks is a general lack of intellectual curiosity and personal experimentation with metaphysics. I found that interesting. He acknowledges that the early writers like Holmes and Goddard and Waddles and those guys, they were more experimenters in the teaching before they would talk about it. And I was actually glad to see him address one issue that is forefront in our Centers for Spiritual Living and the New Thought community today. And that is this push from personal empowerment to social justice. Have you been seeing any of that or reading anything about that in our Centers for Spiritual Living? And it's a conversation that's going on globally in our centers at the home office level, on the ministers' listserv, and so forth. And Mitch speaks to this a little bit. And it started in Centers for Spiritual Living around 2010 is when I first began to observe a broader push for that. And honestly, I've had some resistance personally to it. And that's on two reasons. One is that it feels polarizing to me. It feels a little polarizing to me to be in the world of effects for social justice. Now, it also goes against what I think Ernest Holmes was talking about when he talks about being for something and against nothing. For something and against nothing. And I don't think our CSL leadership is saying that we are against social injustices per se and putting energy there, but that we're trying to be for social justice and put our energy there. But you can see where that is easily derailed, particularly in our world of effects today. And we're protesting everything, aren't we? Protesting. And what happens when we protest? We're putting our energy into that negative as opposed to the positive change that we're really looking to see. Imagine a support rally. Rather than a protest rally. I think Mother Teresa summed it up very well when she said, I was once asked why I don't participate in anti-war demonstrations. I said, I will never do that, but as soon as you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. As soon as you have a pro-peace rally, I'll be there. Where I think we're ripe for derailing is this idea of protest. Again, protesting is putting our energy and holding that negative thing in our consciousness and in our awareness. If you've studied any of the Abraham teaching, Esther Hicks, she uses the example of a buffet. And if we go to the buffet and there's lima beans and we don't happen to like lima beans, do we protest the buffet? Hold our signs? There's lima beans. I can't possibly have this buffet. Oh my gosh, change it. Right? We don't do that. What do? We ignore the lima beans and we take what we want. Right? We ignore the lima beans, we take what we want. And that's the whole idea here. That's a silly example, but it's sort of what happens in the energetic field. That's what happens. It's always very easy, is it not, to know what we don't want. Right? It's easy to know what we don't want. It can be difficult to really claim and know what it is that we do want. And then be able to focus and hold our attention on what we do want. Isn't that the tricky part of this teaching? Is staying in that focus of what I do want and not looking back over here and going, oh, I really don't want that. I really don't want that. Mitch provides some help in diffusing the challenge, though, of this idea of either or in social justice or personal empowerment. And he says it's both. It's both. And of course, that's right in alignment with our teaching, isn't it? And our win-win of God and our oneness and our wholeness that we teach. It's right in line with that. And to support this thesis, he uses the work of Wallace Wattles. Wallace wrote the end of the 18th century, early 1900s. And he said the true aim of personal enrichment is not the accumulation of personal resources alone, but of shared abundance and possibility, not competition. Now imagine him writing that at the turn of the century, when industry was taking over and growing and the industrialization was happening and lots of competition. And he's saying, not competition. Not competition. Ernest Holmes, the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, the author of The Science of Mind, he tells us that competition is a belief in lack. Competition is a belief in lack because I don't think I have enough, so I have to take yours. I have to take yours, rather than abiding in the principles of an abundant universe in which we live, the unlimited abundance of the universe in which we live. When we look more closely at what Wattles is telling us, he says that competition is an outdated, again, early 1900s, outdated idea that will be replaced once we discover the ever-renewing creative capacities of the mind. That's a wonderful statement, isn't it? Once we discover the creative capacities, ever-renewing creative capacities, because he could see what was happening with the industrialization, all the new creations that were coming forth through humankind. We continue to see it today, even exponentially more so, with all of the new creations that are happening, the new technologies that are happening, that are building on each other, that are just continuing to evolve. That's the creative process, the creative principles that he's talking about. And when we can recognize that creativity, that we can create more and don't have to be in competition for what's already existing. We don't have to be in competition for what's already existing. I'm going to bet that this conversation in New Thought about these two sides of this equation are going to continue because it's new. It's, like I say, it's really been happening probably actively for about 9 years now. It's pretty new in our overall organization. My personal belief is more along the lines of Lao Tzu, who said, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach him to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Learning and practicing these spiritual principles, we're feeding ourselves for a lifetime. We're feeding ourselves for a lifetime. It's very much like the example of putting on our own oxygen mask first. In the event of an emergency, an oxygen mask will drop down in front of you in the airplane, if anybody's flown lately, and you put yours on first and then help the person next to you, right? Why do we do that? so that we don't pass out and we're available to help somebody else. And the same is true of our principles for me. The same is true of our principles. We're all in this together. And when we can grow individually and prosper and expand, we are like a pebble on the pond of life, and the ripples go out to affect everyone. Anybody gotten an APS or SRP bill lately? Happy summer, right? Isn't it easy to go, they're making too much money. Why do they charge so much money? Why is my power so much? Resistance, right? Or what if we recognized the gift in gratitude that having power to our homes really is? It does afford us keeping our air conditioners going to cool our homes and our environment in this oppressive triple-digit heat that we get to live in. It powers my computer and my lights so that I can read and study and create. It powers my washing machine and my dishwasher so I don't have to do that stuff by hand. I live in luxury. And I have the privilege of writing out a check and somebody else takes care of all that. When I write that check, the people that printed it benefit. It's business, right? When I write that check, the bank that cashes it, it's business. The APS accounting people that process that check feed their families because they're working, they have a job. The people at APS who repair the lines and keep those going and keep the power flowing, they employ themselves, they feed their children, they put them through college, they educate them. The people that work in the power plants, the scientists, the engineers, all of that through our little checks that we send in there. All of this happens. It's the ripple on the pond, the effect that we have from that simple act of paying a bill. And gratitude for the coolness of the air in our homes, the lights that are on, etc. So we are all that ripple. And for me, the idea of personal empowerment to where I can be more prosperous, and I can influence and impact my world. Another point that Mitch makes, and I mentioned it in the beginning, is the general lack of intellectual curiosity and personal experimentation to actually prove the principles. Now, around here in this community, we would probably go, we do that all the time, don't we? We have our Money Finders program. It's our prosperity program where what we focus on expands in our life. And it's been proven out by many, many of you, many of us in the community each and every week. We teach spiritual technology methods to use in seeing the results of healing. We see new relationships, improving relationships, new careers manifested, financial improvement manifested. So we see these principles proven in our lives. You heard about some of it this morning in the gratitudes. And I understand what Mitch is saying on a global basis. Many of today's news writers are rehashing the old stuff. They're rehashing the old stuff. And I'm not going to throw it under the bus, but a prime example is The Secret. Rhonda Byrne took Wallace Wattles' book that had been in the public domain, or whichever direction it goes, it was public, and used that material and rewrote it to create The Secret, which was a blockbuster success. I think it's wonderful that she brought it back to life, but it wasn't new. It wasn't new. It's not leading edge. And I think that's what he's saying is, where's the leading edge technology? There's so much happening in the world of science today that is proving daily the things that were written about in this 1900 era with Ernest Holmes and Wallace Wattles and all of that. You read Holmes and you think he was studying quantum physics, because a lot of what he says in there is now being proven out today by our scientists. Are you keeping up? Are you staying in touch with that? Are you reading about those things? And then is that spurring on that new thinking, that new thought, and recognizing the power and the presence of God in our lives through us and as us, and the technology of spirituality that we have, that we use. For me, it's about the application. That's what drew me into the science of mind to begin with. Is it something that I can use in my life every day? Is it something that does empower my life? And I say, yes, it does. It is something that I use every day. If changing my thinking didn't change my life, why would I do it? Why would I go through the effort to change my thinking? That's not easy, is it? Any of us that have done it, it's not easy to do. And focusing on what I want, if it doesn't bring me that, why would I bother to spend the time focusing on that if it's not going to work? If tithing doesn't bring me joy and keep me in the flow of financial and spiritual and personal prosperity, why do I give every week? Why would I give every week if it doesn't happen? I give, I practice, and I use these principles because they work. Because they work. The other piece of this that Mitch suggests is that in New Thought, we have a tendency to run from tragedy. We have a tendency to run from tragedy, from analyzing politics, discussing current events. We were talking earlier, just turn off the news, right? Turn that off. I don't want to see that stuff. And that's sort of what he's talking about, us not being in that intellectual discussion and bringing new thought into it. Bringing new thought into it. Some of this comes from, I think, our most misunderstood principle in the science of mind, which is we turn away from our problems. We don't focus on them. We turn away from them. Put our heads in the sand. It's not exactly what Ernest taught. He does say, turn away from the problems and focus on what we would prefer to experience, but he never instructs us to ignore them, to deny the facts. He is instructing us to not pitch a tent over there and wallow in them, right? That's what he's saying. He's saying, okay, it's like I was saying earlier, we know what we don't want. We have a tendency to stay over there, but I really don't want that. I really don't want that. Right? As opposed to, I don't want that, but I want this. And this is where I'm going to stay. This is where my focus is going to be. That's what he's saying. If we're looking for more abundance and financial flow in our lives, we don't deny that we have debt. We don't deny that we don't have sufficient cash flow. We don't deny that and just go spend, spend, spend. We say, okay, I need a budget. I need a savings plan. I need whatever it is that we need in the world of effects right now today. And we use principle to focus on what we are creating in our lives to call in the greater financial flow and the greater abundance. It's the treat and move our feet piece of it, right? It's the treat and move our feet piece of it. I think having respectful dialogue is something that is very critical in our world today. And I think any opportunity that we have to be a part of that is world life changing, because we see so many examples of people not doing it, and it's in all areas of life. It's in all areas of life. In business, rather than having a conversation about problem solving, we have a fight about the issue. In politics, we see it. It's a fight about the issue. Down here in the world of problem, Einstein said we can't solve them from the same place we created them. What is our goal? We all want a solution. How we get there, we stay out of that how, don't we? We stay out of that how. What is the solution that we're looking for? What is the common that we're looking for? We need to develop respectful listening skills to hear the other without resistance. You ever been in a conversation and felt your resistance coming up? They're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong. Your voice in your head starts going and you're making up your argument against them already? Stop. Stop. Tell yourself that. Stop and listen. Stop and listen. And then formulate. If we know what we believe, what we value, what we stand for, and we can articulate that, we can do that in a very calm and peaceful manner, can't we? It doesn't have to be at that escalated, argumentative state. And it can be at that intellectual. If we learn and study and knowing both sides of the issue, are you more well prepared to have that conversation? Absolutely. Absolutely. Mitch contends that the early New Thought leaders were socially and intellectually well-rounded. He's suggesting that maybe we're not. They took seriously both the spiritual and public dimensions of life. And we see this with Waddles, who ran for political office a couple of times. And we may be seeing it today with people like Marianne Williamson. She ran for office in California, and now she's being very brave and courageous to run for the President of the United States. And whether she wins or not, I have no idea, but I do know she's bringing different language to the table. She's bringing different language to the table, and that's a start. That's a start. We may also be seeing some of this shift a little bit in Centers for Spiritual Living with these little seedlings of social justice. As I said, it's pretty new. It's pretty new, but maybe these stirrings will have us looking at a broader picture, more socially and intellectually well-rounded approach to New Thought and its application in the world. I mean, we know it works, right? We've got the best kept secret on the planet. We know it works. So we can enter the dialogue. I do believe that we are poised in the New Thought communities for the next round of expansion. We've been around about 100 years now as an organized community. And it's time for new thinking. It's time to be, we were leading edge when we started, and we've sort of gone mainstream. What's the next leading edge for us? What's the next leading edge for Centers for Spiritual Living? One of Mitch's favorite teachers is Neville Goddard. And in fact, he is the one that introduced me to Neville. I had not really read any of his material until I started reading some of Mitch's stuff. And he had some pretty brash ideas. He's particularly around traditional religion and faith traditions and things, but they make sense. One of his major themes is that God is our imagination. Think about that. We all have imagination. Imagine a mountain stream rolling down and the little rapids and the rocks and the green ferns along the side of it and a little deer standing over on the side. Start to get a mental picture? Yeah, that's your imagination. Goddard says that's God. That's God in us. And our imagination, God within us, is constantly out picturing our mental images and emotively charged thoughts into reality. And if you think about it, you get an idea for a music stand. And you start thinking about that idea for a music stand, and maybe that idea starts out picturing as a picture, a sketch, a drawing. And the next thing you know, some industrial engineer picks it up and engineers it. And then somebody picks it up and produces it. That idea out-pictured from imagination into a physical thing. Right? I mean, we know that's kind of how life works. And what Goddard is suggesting is that's God. That's the God power within us. That imagination, the creativity. And it's continuing all the time as we ponder and plan and do all the things that we do. That imagination is always working. Think about your day yesterday. Saturday. How many emotions did you experience? Yeah. Happiness, joy, solitude, sorrow, anger, frustration, happiness, what? Millions of them, right? We all have hundreds and hundreds of emotions all day. We might have a general tenor of our emotions that we experience, but we're also going to have ups and downs in that throughout the day. And that's what he's talking about. He's saying we need to become aware of those and learn to conjoin them, the intellect and the emotion together, for that conscious creative act. Because we know the law is always working, right? I mean, it's like the law is there with a little notepad going, what you want? What you want? What you want? And we've got these creative, emotive thoughts. And if we can harness that, we can see that outpicturing more quickly in our lives. As we're going to wrap up today, I want to share Mitch's summary of Neville's teaching, the methods behind Neville's teaching, and Mitch has boiled it down to 3 points. And it's sort of the 3 points of the book, really. And we started off with this first one in the very first week. And it's every creative act begins with a passionate desire. Remember we talked about that. What's your chief aim? What's your passionate desire? What is the thing that you're seeking to bring forward in your experience today? What is that? What is that? And if you haven't discovered your chief aim yet, I would recommend this week, spend some dedicated time in contemplation. What is it that I really want? And if you have to start with what I don't want, start there, but let it go. Let it go. And begin to look at the opposite of that and focus on what is it that I want to experience and create. If we're creating relationship, a lot of us start with, well, I don't want him to be this way, and I don't want him to be that way, and I don't want him to live here, and I don't want him to have that happen. Right? We got that whole laundry list of things we don't want. And we keep experiencing more and more of that. So we have to go, okay, that's done. What I do want. What I do want. And narrow that down to the top 3. The 3 most important things around this chief aim. And it's about feeling, it's about experience, it's not about the physical dimensions of it. Number 2, your imagination is fertilized in a state of physical immobility. Now, what he's talking about here is that time just before we drift off to sleep, or just as we're beginning to wake up. That transitional time of quasi-consciousness. We all know what that is, right? As I've played with this work, I've begun to notice what are my thoughts as soon as I begin to become aware of them when I'm waking up or going to sleep. What are those thoughts? And Mitch is very adamant about do not problem solve. He says, get up. Don't do that. You know, don't lay there in that state and try to problem solve. It's not the time to do it. I also notice that sometimes my thoughts go to the negative. I worry in those times. And so I am consciously now in that transitional state of unconsciousness, trying to not go there and trying to really begin to focus on that desire, that chief aim. That is the time of fertilization, is what he says. It's your imagination is fertilized in a state of physical immobility. So be aware of your thoughts. This is something you can do right now today, right? Anybody else take a Sunday afternoon nap? Yeah. No, as you're drifting off, play with this. Where am I? Oh, there's my chief aim, and I imagine it. I'm going to tell you how to do the imagining part also. Or tonight before you go to sleep, or in the morning as you wake up. Think about this process and play with it some. The third principle we can practice is to form a vivid, simple mental scene of your desire fulfilled. This is visualization, right? It's the practice of visualization. And how do you believe you will be or feel once you have manifested that chief aim of yours? How do you believe you will feel? He suggests that it's a simple scene, such as a handshake, congratulating you on your achievement. Imagine a key. If you're manifesting a car or a home or an office, imagine the key, receiving the key in your hand and just feeling that. He says that if I'm climbing a ladder, I'm not observing myself climbing the ladder. I'm climbing the ladder. I feel the rungs in my hands and on my feet and my body going upward. I feel the power in my back pulling me upward on that ladder. It's not an observed situation. This is a be in the situation. Feel the acceptance of that thing. If it's financial flow, feel how you will feel that piece of security in knowing that's done. Feel that. Feel that. vivid, simple mental sense of your desired fulfilled. And the neat thing is, you know a lot of other spiritual practices that you can add to that to enhance it, right? We have gratitude, we have affirmative prayer, meditation, affirmation. You can use all of those around these 3 steps to energize them even more in expediting that manifestation. All of the spiritual technologies that we teach work together. They all work together. Use your chief aim, the transition state before or after sleeping to visualize the completion. 3 steps, 3 easy ones. So this week, you need to remember to treat and move your feet, right? We do our prayer treatments and we move our feet. We take that inspired action. Let's close out our book today with a quote from Neville Goddard, actually. I pulled down one of his books called 5 Lessons. And love how spirit works. I just did this. And there was this quote. To attempt to change the world before we change our concept of ourselves is to struggle against the nature of things. There can be no outer change until there is first an inner change. And that's why we teach successful living from the inside out. Won't you join me in an affirmative prayer now as we take this into prayer this morning? How good it is that we come together in community on this beautiful, beautiful day in Scottsdale, connecting and uniting in the one as we recognize that there is only one life, one mind, one spirit, and that is God. It is the power and the presence of the universe. It is that which has created the smallest and the largest and everything in between. It is that which holds our planets in their orbits. It is that which breathes me. And all of it is here now, in, through, and as this room, in, through, and as each and every one of us here, in, through, and as me, as an individualized and unique expression of it. Whether we believe it is the imagination, as Neville suggests, there's something else within us. God is all there is, and all of it is here now. So recognizing that we live, move, and have our being in this one power, this one love, this one peace. I speak my word for and about each one of us this day, knowing, claiming, and accepting that whatever that chief aim is that is on our heart, I know that its manifestation is imminent. As we focus on it, as we embody it, as we call it forward into our reality and our experience, I know that it is done. For the universe is already in alignment and bringing forth all of the necessary help, assistance, tools, guidance, whatever it might be. It is all perfectly aligned for each one of us for that manifestation now. And I know for anyone that has anything on their heart this day that they are seeking prayer support, prayer treatment, peace around, that whatever needs to be healed, revealed, lifted, improved, changed, is done so. Is done so. And how grateful I am for this manifestation. Grateful for the manifestation of the prayer, grateful for this beautiful, wonderful teaching, grateful for the grace of God that is in my life and the lives of each of us here, and the life of Scottsdale Center for Spiritual Living, blessing this community and its continued work in the world. As I release this into the action of law, into the activity of mind, knowing that it is already done, it is so, and we affirm this truth together by saying, and so it is.